My problem becomes is that I'm a very honest human. And I tried to carry that for being years of being a dishonest human, that I may have overcorrected my path. I was a desperate, delusional dreamer, and the desperate part got me in a lot of trouble. I literally am the epitome sitting here talking to you, Tom, as a man that would have died or been in prison for life had the dream not worked. And then I have situations where I'm like, I don't belong here. I don't know, man.
There is something poetic about a 39-year-old man winning New Artist of the Year. I don't know where you're at in your life or what you're going through, but I want to tell you to keep going.
You know, that kind of delusional, just celebrate every moment I had, I made a moment. Right then, I was like, this is what God's purpose was for me.
Like many, I discovered the 40-year-old artist after this viral speech at the Country Music Awards in 2023. Inspired by how his speech moved me, I decided to look into his background because I needed to know what transpired in his life that got him to this point. Behind his tattoos, behind his journey, and his larger-than-life presence. One that reflects that there's no glory without pain and suffering. The more I read into the story of Jelly Roll, the more I understood the story of a man who came from harsh conditions and rose to the greatest of heights, not by overnight, but through years of dedication and hard work.
You know how you go to school and they would ask you what you wanted to be when you grew up, and they'd give you like a list of 3 options. And I do now remember, every other kid wrote like firefighter, astronaut. You know, from the era I grew up in, astronaut. These were like the 3 or 4 things everybody wanted to be. And I wrote one thing from kindergarten to 5th grade. It was always rapper.
And you know what that means?
I learned a story about a man who could have easily accepted his fate of either death or life in prison, but chose a path that forced Jelly Roll to look within, and it gave him the opportunity to share his pain with the world.
That line, that angels only meet you where you are, and I'm in the dark. And it goes, at least for now, Lord, I ain't losing hope that somehow you could make a heart of gold from a heart of stone.
As he shared the personal and most vulnerable moments of his life through his art, Jelly Roll gained more than he could ever imagine. Since the inception of his career in 2003, Jelly Roll has seen it all. And Jelly Roll is right. There is something poetic about a 40-year-old artist winning Best New Artist. Perhaps Jelly Roll wouldn't have gotten that big break in 2022 with Son of a Sinner that changed his life completely had he succumbed to the distractions that surrounded him. Music introduced him to an audience that would accept him for him. He went through many evolutions in his career, which included an entire pivot to a different genre, but what remained consistent was his resilient spirit. Born Jason Bradley DeFord, he was raised in the Antioch neighborhood of Nashville, Tennessee. For as long as Jelly Roll could remember, all he ever wanted to be was a rapper. His earliest memories of wanting to do music are those that are connected to his mother.
And I still to this day think I'm writing for my mama.
Wow.
Like to this day, I'm still like, when I'm really finishing a song, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what my mama would think about this. That's where my love for music came in. Because imagine you're 10 years old and you don't see your mother in a healthy space very much. But when she seems her healthiest, there's always music playing. Being young, to me, I was like, oh, this solves problems. This brings people together. This makes sick people better. Like there's something happening with this vibration that's different. And I'm probably 10, Jay, and right then I was like, I want to write songs.
Jelly Roll doesn't recall many people having jobs in this area, or much hope for that matter. In his neighborhood in town, they were all reduced to a fast lifestyle that landed them in either one of 2 places, the graveyard or jail. Jelly Roll's fascination with music always guided him back to the right path, even when he became lost. Jelly Roll was thrusted into an environment of instability because his family unit was for the most part unstable. Jelly Roll strayed away from his church upbringing that he experienced in his youth and traveled downwards into the abyss of moral degeneracy. The influence of the streets and his peers were stronger than his faith at the time. This led to a tiresome cycle of imprisonment and legal troubles for Jelly Roll, which included felony charges for possession with intent to distribute and aggravated robbery.
How do you write songs in prison?
Beat on the steel bunk. Had a real hollow sound, so you could at least keep your time in that way. The hard part was when you write so many of them, Howard, you start to forget the melodies. And I ended up coming home with a bunch of songs that I couldn't remember the melodies to, but I had really good lyrics.
Everybody around Jelly Roll had a hustle, so he figured he needed one too. And in pursuit to get more money, he turned to the streets to get that money by any means necessary.
I'm gonna tell y'all a story before I let him do him. We was incarcerated together. And I told Word when I came home, we were gonna fuck with this music shit.
Jelly Roll explains he wanted to be the one getting money, not the one losing it. A young Jelly Roll didn't have the foresight at the time to understand that the route he was taking was going to lead to dire consequences down the line. Perhaps if he'd known this, he wouldn't have gambled with his life. Every single day of Jelly Roll's life as an adolescent, all the way into his early 30s, came with a risk. He could roll the dice wrong and get a life sentence, roll again and end up dead, or roll again and end up as one of the biggest music stars on the planet. The problem is, nobody quite knew what the outcome would be, which to me makes this story so intriguing. The importance of the almighty dollar took Jelly Roll on the ride of his life.
I didn't have a good relationship with how I looked at money. I looked at money as the way out of this particular situation, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get that. And I had no morals about it. When you're a kid, you're just looking for any kind of acceptance, any sense of belonging, any sense of want. And the streets will always give it to you.
Jelly Roll admits that he turned to a life of crime to support his mother when his father left. He felt he had to fill his father's shoes, saying that somebody's got to do what he was doing, at least try to figure out how to make some money. And that's what he did. In between dabbling with what came with the street life, he leaned on rap music to get through tumultuous times. He was selling his own music out of his car, looking to be discovered. Jelly Roll believes that you could see in his eyes at the time that he was desperate. Jelly Roll cites 3 6 Mafia, UGK, and 8 Ball and MJG as influences. The voice for just his neighborhood was on a path to becoming the voice for millions of people. Since 2003, Jelly Roll has released 10 albums, 9 collaborative albums, 22 mixtapes, and 2 EPs. To see the full extent of Jelly Roll's journey, I covered his entire catalog that is accessible online to see how he's grown, changed, and evolved into the artist and man he is today. To dive deep to see how his marriage, his kids, his mother, and how the street life affected the art he made. This is the story of Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll started his career with the Plain Schmear tape in 2003. Very few have access to this mixtape, but he was known as the young guy on the Nashville rap scene at the time. He looked up to the local rapper Haystack, and they ended up forming a relationship as collaborators. After this mixtape, he began working on Gambling on a White Boy, Volume 1, the following year.
I started working on Gambling on a White Boy. Well, so after the freestyle battles, I had went back to jail. Because remember, I was on bond. Yep. Unfortunately, I had to settle the case out, and I had to cop a plea, and I ended up having to do some more time. When I was locked up, I come home, and I had met Jazz through the Outer Limits before I got locked up, right? Mm-hmm. So Jazz Howard from Cross Tracks Entertainment had always told me, like, well, when you come home, I got you. Took me under his wing, and that's when we started working on Gambling on a White Boy Volume 1.
Jelly Roll released the Halfway House mixtape in 2005. This is the earliest musical entry point into the artistry of Jelly Roll, which is categorized as a southern rap release.
How does it feel to think that you gotta steal? Cause your pops isn't around and your mama's popping pills. It's kinda hard, but we grind through these circumstances. You could end up dead or in jail, but it's worth the chance.
He raps about his humble beginnings that entrenched him in the middle of poverty. He was forced to use his environment to make a living for himself.
Ramen noodles and ketchup equals spaghetti. And back then, that's all I had for dinner. And I remember the lights went out for half the winter.
And this included robberies and selling narcotics. On this project, Jelly Roll showcased a decent ear for top-line melodies and is overall very reminiscent of what was dominating the airwaves in the South at the time. Artists such as T.I., Lil Jon, and 3 6 Mafia come to mind. Jelly Roll raps about taking chances and risk over heavy drums, dark synths, occasional vocal samples, and crunchy, compressed vocals. And even though his weight is discussed by Jelly Roll, it doesn't stop him from getting the attention of women, which he relied heavily on for validation to cover up his body image insecurities, as he explained verbatim in multiple interviews. Even though he was fully immersed as a rapper at this time, he still had some country elements in his music, such as the song Be Alright.
Even though you feel alone and you've been working all night, and to make it out of poverty, sometimes you gotta fight. That's what they told me.
There was a lot of aggression and pain in this mixtape. Jelly Roll is dealing with losses, breakups, and betrayals, and he is big on authenticity and living the life he raps about. Jelly Roll likely used his aggression as a mask to hide the vulnerability he was feeling that stemmed from unresolved trauma.
I'm waiting on the sun, but it's snowing and it's sleeting. I know where I'm at, but don't know where I'm going when I'm leaving.
Building on the relationship he formed with the local rapper Haystack, Jelly Roll later discovered the next step in a young artist's journey, which is figuring out how to get access to a studio to release more polished recordings. His introduction to this was through Sunny Paradise and Street Flavor Records in late 2005 and into 2006. which would lead into the 2006 release of the Street Flavor mixtape. Sunny Paradise's indie label showed Jelly Roll what went into putting a record together as well as promoting it.
People jokingly called me Haystack. Right? Like dudes would meet me and wouldn't know, but you're like a haystack. Because I had the same haircut, the same lingo. And then Stack keeps hearing about this white boy Jelly Roll they call Haystack. So eventually we end up connecting via the phone, right? Because like I was just like, I've always been a rapping motherfucker. And I knew Street Flavor and I knew that's who was putting his records out. So I remember being like, wow, I love Stack. I need to meet whoever's got the studio.
Who's signing the check?
Yeah, like exactly. Who's cutting the checks? Listen, Stack does not have the studio. Where's the studio at? Yeah. And I remember that being the first time I found out who Sunny Paradise was because his name was on the record.
After doing a short stint in prison, Jelly Roll was back to music, and he was determined to pick up where he left off and get right back to the hustle with the House Arrest mixtape in 2007. At this time, Jelly Roll had one foot in the streets and one foot in the music industry, rapping lines like, "I put the pistol to my head because I hate life. These rappers don't know what suffering is. And my baby mama hates me, but I'm still in love. If I want to be free, then why am I still selling drugs? I just pray that I can change my ways." Jelly Roll knows he's not living right, but he doesn't have the wherewithal yet to pull himself out of his own darkness, other than to rap about his circumstances.
Whether hurricane, sleet, or snow, it doesn't matter. When it's raining, cats and dogs, I'm right here. I gotta get it.
The following year, Jelly Roll returned with Gambling on the White Boy Volume 2. On this mixtape, it sounded like there was a void in his soul. It didn't sound like he was focused on standing out. Wasn't focused on pushing his sound forward. He was just fitting into what the sound was, subject matter, and what was popular around his area at the time. He raps about my city full of killers, my city full of haters, running from the police, and partaking in illegal activity. To me, I hear a stagnant artist just trying to survive and isn't living to his full potential. I gather it's a lot of proving at this time, trying to prove to people that you have money, prove you're tough, and prove you get women. But he does have some lines here and there that shows his true reality and authenticity. Lines like, "I ain't never seen the president rolling through my community, and now I'm standing in the cell reminiscing. At the end of the day, I'm still standing."
You don't see that shit in Beverly Hills, cause they put us on these streets and expect us to kill. Then they try to win the vote and say these politicians true to me. I ain't never seen the president in my...
Jelly Roll then released 2 mixtapes in 2009. He released the Hate Goes On mixtape first, and then Gambling on a White Boy Volume 3 right after. Both of these tapes reflected his life that was filled with gang activity, violence, and selling narcotics. Gambling on a White Boy Volume 3 details his robbery charge he was facing at the time, and during this time he hadn't done enough character development to feel the remorse that he would later feel for the people that he hurt and affected during this time of survival.
Crazy that a lot of rappers talk about spending nights at the graveyard and the cemetery and stuff, but ain't never really been.
Disrespect the fat man, you gon' be the last man. I'ma fuck around and slap one of y'all with a backhand.
At this point, it was like a badge of honor to him and not a sign of a character flaw. He was lost. Lines like, "How can you know me if I don't know myself? You know, a lot of rappers never even taken a trip to a cemetery. I take that very seriously," explained his mindset at the time. Recently out of jail, he had more time for self-reflection, and there is some personal growth displayed, but the street still had a grip on him, and eventually, they were going to bring him down with them. Jelly Roll had a decision to make, but even lines like, "If I believe in Jesus, then why am I selling demons?" lets me know that he was somewhat conscious of the decisions he was making and knew that he needed to make a change. He also approaches his insecurities with the Eminem 8 Mile method, in that, "I'll talk about my insecurities before you can say anything about them." Whether that's about his weight, his income, what kind of car he drives, or the women he deals with, it's all a tactic to hide his vulnerability. He frequently talks about the trauma he's dealt with and how his daughter inspired him to change his circumstances.
People hating on me, it's the same old song. And the hate goes on, and the hate goes on. What can I say except for say that it's love? My homie 17 when the judge gave him a dub. See,
Hey, yes, death before dishonor. Forgive me, your honor. I did what I had to do just to make $1.
Jelly Roll released 3 mixtapes in 2010. The first one was Therapeutic Music, the Bipolar Edition. He acknowledged that if he doesn't change, then he will be dead. In this mixtape, he explains that he's going to church more often, and he's in that part of his journey where he's attempting to do the right things in life to live an honest life, but he's still flooded with all this temptation that he's trying to free himself from. He has lyrics like, "Instead of judging me, why don't you stop and pray for me? And I got a lot of haters that want to see me dead." Sonically, to me, this project is reminiscent of old Young Jeezy. After this project, he released Therapeutic Music 2, The Inner Struggle.
Lord, please forgive me for the sins I committed. I was trying to make sure baby mama didn't get evicted. I used to go to church, man. I used to pray a lot. Not to mention that I'm broken and broke. And if rap don't work, then it's back to the coke. And the smile doesn't tell you how I really feel inside. See, I don't want to die, but I don't want to be alive. I wonder if my life will ever change. I'm tired of chasing fortune and fame. I'm tired of standing out in this rain. No, we've been known, we've been right and we've been wrong. We get high and we get gone, we get lost in.
On this mixtape, health is still an issue, but he remembers to do it for his daughter Bailey. Jelly Roll raps, "I really wish I could go back, but in life we can't press rewind." The more Jelly Roll did the internal work, the more his music started to change. At this time, he started to get more industry recognition, like being posted on World Star Hip Hop and being noticed by the southern rapper Yellow Wolf. But it's not all clear sailings from here. He's still selling drugs at this point, but not because he wants to, but because he feels like he has to. He couldn't leave the country because of his criminal record, and he can't get a regular job because of his criminal record. I found it interesting that he freestyled everything as a rapper, but he writes a lot as a country artist, which explains the difference in his depth. His style changed somewhat at this point, and instead of leaning on a lot of southern influences, he sounded a lot like his industry contemporaries at the moment.
Told y'all I ain't playing this shit, bitch. I'm still in the streets. I promise one thing, ain't nothing changed about me, motherfucker. I'm on.
During this time, while Jelly Roll was still entrenched in the streets and he was focused on artist development, that were unofficial street releases that he released during his time included Mr. Controversy in 2010, 11 on the Come Out in 2011, The Collection, White Trash Tale, and Mid-Grade Miracle. You know, your Drakes, your Waynes, and of course the legend Eminem. A lot of the rapping was surface level, but the songs on his album when he was a full-time rapper that gained the most traction were the country-leaning records, or the ones that talked about his life in depth. After this mixtape, Jelly Roll returned with Deal or No Deal. Jelly Roll has a line that says, "Labels won't sign me, they say I ain't got class." Well,
I'm white trash, y'all can kiss my.
And that just explains to me that he had no problem with being the standout and outcast, and he didn't want to fit in with a corporate role. He was fine doing it all by himself.
But y'all don't understand the irony, the hatred that's inside of me. Last of a dying breed. Wake up every day and try to make it out of poverty.
I feel like mid-grade is just kind of always that middle point in life. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like where you're at, even from the gas pump, from the regular to the premium. You know, some people are in the middle, in different hustles. You know, and I just felt like it was kind of common. And I named it the Boston George story because when George Young got the name Boston George, a lot of people missed it. He wasn't a cocaine kingpin at the time. He was an average dude that moved to California and had a fucking fat friend named Tuna, then decided they wanted to sell pie. Are you ready? Yep. I'm in here like, damn, man, everybody in there hype but me. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I had the wrong, yeah, y'all shouldn't even put them there and fuck with me like that. Turn me up a little bit. About grabbing knees, cause them boys wasn't on the block with me. In the kitchen straight whipping that pot with me. Got a lot in the game, it's a lot to leave. Ain't no white boy in the city that's as hot as me. Want a verse nowadays, gotta charge a fee. Started off with a couple grand larcenies, a couple robberies. We was in poverty.
In 2012, Jelly Roll released his first studio album, The Big South Story. On this album, he took more attempts at radio-friendly records to expand his audience. This included very women-friendly records, as well as the records dedicated for those still in the streets trying to make a way. He made a promise to his mother that he would never sell drugs again, and so far he's making good on that promise. He's appreciative that he's still alive after all he's been through, but he knows he has so much more work to do and so much more to accomplish. He dedicated this album to anyone who has a dream and is working towards it. He raps, "I reminisce to selling crack out of a motel. I reminisce to late nights in a cold cell" on the song Living in the Moment. And also, Southern Hospitality.
I try to stay confident and humble, but that's a hard balance. Cause in my life I probably slept on 100 couches. I took a little break, but finally we back again. If I wasn't rapping right now, it's drug trafficking.
Made it out the dope game, my whole city proud of me. And on Living My Life, he raps, "And every day I feel like I'm getting closer. Then I got a letter that I'm close to foreclosure." The standout record to me is Dream While I'm Awake. As he raps on the song, "You can make it if you have a gimmick now, but will they judge me on my lyrics or my image now? And on the record Wanna See Me Dead, he raps about the severe isolation he's faced along his journey. Some nights I ride alone, just staring at the sky. I think about my life. I'm blessed to be alive. And in 2013, Jelly Roll found himself again at the center of legal troubles when Waffle House sued him over the use of their logo on his mixtape, Whiskey, Weed, and Waffle House. The lawsuit led to a cease and desist letter and the freezing of Jelly Roll's YouTube channel. Jelly Roll also had to pay $10,000 to settle the case.
You got into a really funny but also kind of famous lawsuit with Waffle House.
Yeah.
And that was huge national exposure at the time.
Sure, dude.
And that was your big takeaway. It was kind of cool.
It was awesome.
Jelly Roll in 2013 released the No Filter mixtape with Lil White. The pairing initially met on tour. Jelly Roll and White connected back in 2004. White credits Jelly Roll for helping him get out of a tough time when they started recording this mixtape.
Jelly calls me. What are you doing, Bubba? Look, man, I'm sitting here with my buddy Stoner. We got all these beats, man. I think we should finally do that collaborative album we were talking about doing. That other people had different ideas of going routes with it, but I think we know what to do. We just throw on some hard beats and just fucking rap. Fucking flew to Nashville and we started No Filter that day.
On this mixtape, Jelly Roll and Lil White focus on cracking the facade of perception that everybody wants to be someone that they are not. That everyone wants to be someone they are not. And he wants average people to live in their truth and not live like would continue his working relationship with Lil White later into the future with the follow-up to this No Filter mixtape, No Filter 2, with the same premise and same concept, rapping hard raps over hard instrumentals.
This the future right there. That's what it is, though. You know what I'm saying? That's the future right there. I probably won't be here to see it, so you know what I'm saying? Lex gonna have to coach him up, you know what I'm saying? All these motherfuckers gonna hold us down.
In 2013, Jelly Roll also released Business as Usual with frequent collaborator Haystack. Jelly Roll was focused on building a future for his daughter and leaving the streets alone. He had occasional moments on this mixtape of boasting about potential violence to those that try to stop him from his goals, and he acknowledges that he's facing a lot of resistance, hate, and that he's doing it all by himself.
What people can expect from Business as Usual is strictly business on steroids.
Baby girl, I'm out in the field, trying to get some money, trying not to get killed. Maybe one day from the time we can chill, get a big picket fence with the house on the hill. And every now and then, do you know what I do? Get drunk alone in a dark room and think about you. Every now and then, I lay awake.
I would say that the relationship I have with Haystack is way bigger than music. Like, we didn't start even really, he would feature me on, like, I was on his mixtape, and he was on every CD I ever dropped, really. But we never did no real collaborative records until Strictly Business came about a couple years ago. And that's just because we just had such a different relationship, man. Stack really kind of, groomed me. And I'll be honest enough to say what a lot of rappers from Nashville won't. Being a white kid from Nashville, Tennessee trying to rap, Haystack was the mold for that.
In 2014, Jelly Roll released the Biggest Loser mixtape, and he had a line on this album that pretty much sums up his career up until this point, and his mindset. Either you trap or you rob, only two options against all odds, from the song So Long. The standout from this album is Goodnight Shirley, and a personal favorite of mine is Better Man Than I Was. He achieved a great country rap blend with the song Never Know, and it's foreshadowing his pivot into country music to come later in the next phase of his career.
Like the bad times, I am the epitome of white trash America. Talking loud and cussing loud in public, I'm embarrassing.
In 2015, Jelly Roll released the fifth installment of his recurring therapeutic music series. He says in the song Cactus, if you want to live good, then you gotta feel pain, real pain. Jelly Roll is belting and showing the soulful singing that he's known for today, and his singing voice has a lot more character than his rapping voice to me, which explains why most people lean towards these records from Jelly Roll more than the braggadocious rap records. Over the years, he got more comfortable with his singing voice, became a better hook writer, and his top lines were a lot more catchier over the years. His message has stayed the same though, through his entire career, and his resilient spirit and his will to not accept a loss as a death sentence is why he's here in the first place. And as long as he was breathing, he was determined to continue. From the sound of this album, it seems that his tunnel vision focus is starting to pay off for him. It's funny hearing him talk about how when he gets really successful in the song Fuck Up, that he's going to blow off all his money and live an even wilder life, Some would say he got more mature and focused as he got older, a level of development and transformation that perhaps even Jelly Roll didn't expect. He's still dealing with his addictions though, a hectic tour life, family issues, and more friends going to the jail and the graveyard. In 2016, Jelly Roll released his Sobriety Sucks album. The album contains ballads about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and the song When I Get Rich has that relatable edge that Jelly Roll is known for, with a twist of rock and country. Jelly raps with confidence that we put on for the poor and middle class. The closer he gets to his dreams and goals, he reminisces more about his humble beginnings of sleeping on couches and his time being immersed in his pain. Having a daughter forced him to get his life together. That was the focus he needed. He doesn't quite fit in with the Hollywood image and pop stars of this industry, and he still feels at home with the misfits of society. Up until this point, Jelly Roll self-admittedly says he's messed up every relationship he's been in. Whether that is because he hasn't had the capacity to maintain his romantic relationships, or that he's only focused on his daughter, it still had a profound effect on his music. He's labeled himself Nashville's Black Sheep. Some of my favorites from this album include California and Why I Smoke. In 2017, Jelly Roll releases Addiction Kills album. This album is about losing your battles to addictions. One of the quotes from this album that I focused on was, "I really want my freedom, but don't want to lose my soul for it." Jelly Roll has been put to the fire his whole life. And even though he's been burned many times, he's learned the only way to get out of his circumstances is to go through it. As his audience continues to grow and his life changes, he knows he won't be able to fully evolve if he can't keep his addictions under control. But his growing success is leading to a growing confidence within himself. From the song Sex, Drugs, and Pain, he raps, "Not a role model, got a fucked up personal life."
While I was working on that project, I had met Struggle. So when I came home, we had linked up through community corrections kind of, and just ended up just kind of immediately ended up connecting with each other. And then that's the night that I told Struggle, "Hey man, meet me at Jazz's spot the next day." And he came to Jazz's studio, Struggle did.
Oh, okay.
And played me a song called I Ain't Biting.
In 2017, Jelly Roll released the first installment of his collaborative album series with rapper Struggle Jennings. Struggle Jennings is the perfect balance to Jelly Roll, and they get each other on a deeper level. They see eye to eye on how volatile the streets in this life can be, how dark it can be, and how it can consume your soul if you let it. Jelly Roll raps, "If the feds come and pick me up," months in the song Death Before Dishonor, and in the same song, Struggle Jennings raps, "The only ones that can stab you are the ones you let close." They both have an honor to the street code and talk frequently about being solid, and that if it comes down to it, will you hold them down the way they hold you down? The pairing rap about an honest perspective of what street life is and what comes with it. I feel they feel a sense of responsibility to their audience and the youth that may be listening to steer them in a better direction so they don't have to feel and experience the same pain that they did. They feel they are the voice for the voiceless, and quote, "We are the outlaws of our day." Cowboys is a standout on this album, and it highlights how important parental guidance is for the youth to ensure they don't end up on a path that completely destroys their future. In the song Glitter, a slow piano ballad about Jelly Roll continuing to struggle with changing his life. "I've seen it all from closed caskets to sealed indictments. The preacher man said heaven's real, and I'm still invited." In 2018, Jelly Roll released 2 follow-ups to the installment series of Waylon and Willie, Waylon and Willie 2, and then Waylon and Willie 3, which had similar subject matter, similar chemistry, but just a refined look on their perspective of being these 2 established Nashville rappers speaking to the youth, speaking to the street life, speaking to being authentic and living in your truth, and allowing people to see what happens when you come from the street life and you choose to do better for yourself and your family, and what could happen if you choose to embark on a life of crime. And also that other rappers that rap the street life aren't telling the truth, and that they aren't a reliable source.
Where do all the bad guys go? Where they can let the bad times roll.
In 2018, Jelly Roll released Goodnight Nashville, which sounds like a complete musical departure from his old life and an entrance into his new reality. And it sounds like his leap of faith is paying off. It doesn't mean that the journey is over with, but he's enjoying the fruits of his labor and his career. But there's a balance, because although he has more money now, it doesn't outright guarantee 100% happiness or that problems will suddenly disappear. When you're hearing the Echoes hook, Just Let Go, Jelly Roll understands there's only so much you can do for people, even if it's your loved ones.
You heard the sound of an empty soul when it echoed, when it echoed, when it echoed.
The first person to tell you that you could sing, given that you came from a family of bad singers that you just told me.
So I heard it a lot, but I didn't believe it.
Who you heard
Just like,
you were a good singer?
but not like you were a good singer, but it's like, yo, you should sing more. I went to a bar and did karaoke, and I sung Bob Seger, Old Time Rock and Roll. And some scumbag of a human production guy goes, you should sing, man. He's like, you should do that on your music more.
Someone said that to you?
Yeah. I was like, maybe I'll try something. And every album from then, I already kind of did the melodies on my songs, like more hip-hop style, though. So like, I wake up every day, I hit my knees and breathe. It was more swag than it was singing.
Yeah.
So then I was like, man, I'm just going to try to belt. And I just started kind of slowly building. And every album I would drop after that, I was like, I'm going to put one song on here where I'm just singing. And then for like 3 albums straight, that was the only song that was popular. And I was like, maybe I'm a better singer than I am a rapper.
Yeah.
And it took me 20 years to figure that out.
Jelly Roll raps, you can't take me to a place that I've never been. And the soul is something you can't sell again. And this pain inside me, it might never end. I just pray that the pearly gates let me in, from the song Believe. And in Goodnight Nashville, the title song, it feels like he's expanding broader than the local limits he was shackled to earlier in his life and his career. And in the title track, Goodnight Nashville, it sounds like Jelly Roll is expanding broader than the local limits he was shackled to, and he's more known in far more places than his local stomping ground of Antioch, Tennessee. I actually find Jelly Roll to be very endearing at this point of my research and in his career, and I'm rooting for him to win. Sunday morning feels like he's basking in the best moments of his life, and it feels like the stars are aligning for him. And I'm aware he hasn't had the easiest of journeys, but it's an illusion that anyone goes through life without loss. All the incarceration stints, being told no by multiple labels, constantly dealing with his vices, while he still has to be there to support his now wife and children, led to intense internal conflicts within himself often. But losses make the wins that much sweeter. And Keep Breathing from this album reflects that journey. In 2019, Jelly Roll released Crosses and Crossroads, filled with reflective raps and rock and country adjacent melodies. Jelly Roll uses his life experiences to measure how far he's come. Although he's had a rough life up until this point, he still wouldn't change anything. He battles with his addictions, but he's treading forward towards daily self-improvement. He's had friends who have lost their lives to the streets and to drugs. He's experienced massive losses and heartbreaks. The melodic rap structure and fast-paced tempo, and for the most part, the subject matter and writing on this album was sharp and relatable. When he figured out how to make this chaos connect with a wider range of people, he began to make music and live life with a purpose. On No Worries, Jelly Roll raps about a saying that he got from his father that helped Jelly Roll bear the weight of the uncomfortable truths in his life. Faith the size of mustard seeds make a mountain movable. My father said pills too hard to swallow are still chewable.
It's about understanding that we all have a monster in our closet, right? So it's just kind of coming to peace with that.
Jelly Roll released 2 albums in 2020. Both were distributed through rap legends Tech Nine's Strange Music imprint. The first of the 2 releases was A Beautiful Disaster. He took these 2 albums as an opportunity to springboard him into bigger aspirations and new heights as a musician and songwriter. His voice got stronger, his range got broader, his goals became more tangible, and his focus was set on creating impact and change for himself, his family, and the people that listen to his music. He took an opportunity with each song to reach someone new with a lyric or melody. Mental health is a recurring theme in Jelly Roll's music, and his life shows that the work to be mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy is a never-ending journey. Healing is never-ending. There are times where Jelly Roll may feel the weight of his emotions and feel helpless. To be the one that everyone depends on, but he has no one to depend on himself when times get hard, is a challenging task. On the song Suicide, Jelly Roll laments that his wife is the calm to a storm, and when he feels upset and depressed, she is there to help him every time.
But I'm riding around listening to Creature, and I'm like, man, this has got Tech Nine all over it, man. This is where the king of therapeutic music meets the king of darkness, mixed with a little Chris Calico. Man, this is what we need. Like, I grew up like really idolizing Tech and what he built independently and what he is to the hip hop scene and his cadences and flows and shit. I just remember thinking, man, I'm fixing to have fucking Tech 9 and Chris Calico on this song.
The second album to come from Jelly Roll in 2020 was Self-Medicated. Continuing to build on the sound of rap, rock, and country, the Nashville artist created songs for those who found comfort in knowing there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Jelly Roll drives home a message that if I can survive this, so can you. Songs like Dance with Ghosts has an eerie sound, kind of a sound that plays in your mind when one is experiencing a heightened level of anxiety and hopelessness. It's that voice in your head that screams, I'm all alone. And at that point, that's when you need reassurance and other people to lean on the most. Life has a way of stealing our joy sometimes and crushing us. And that's when we have to fight harder to regain our hope. And that's what I feel the most of the majority of the sound and the writing on this album was about. Lyrics like, even when I get high, why do I feel so low from promise, is reminiscent of that. One of the most defining moments that come from this album was the success of the song Save Me. Which to me is an emotional experience and a lyrical exercise between two close friends and frequent collaborators. And as they battle their demons, they get closer to their mission with every release. And my favorite record from this particular album would be Enemy, just the chorus and the hook of my own enemy is me. And sometimes we are our biggest obstacle, right? The mentality that we have, the thoughts we have, how brutal we are mentally and emotionally on ourselves, and how harsh we are in our own head. We can be the ones that get in our own way at times. And I think Struggle Jennings, no pun intended, and Jelly Roll are no strangers to struggling. And they could admit that their decisions have led them up to this point. But it built character, it built resiliency, it built an appreciation for life and those that have supported them along the way. And it's helped them keep in mind what is most important. Sometimes you have to go through these experiences to understand what's not good for you and what is good for you. And you roll the dice with that. It's a gamble. And some of your bad decisions have a compounding effect to it. They have interest on it. And sometimes decisions could be so irredeemable, right? Catch a life sentence, you get killed. A lot of these type of experiences have happened to close friends and family members of Jelly Roll and Struggle Jennings, and they were able to turn their life around because they got the opportunity to. Not to say that they were afforded necessarily a luxury of any sort, or they were given a lot of help. It felt like along the way they were left to die. In 2021, Jelly Roll released Ballads of the Broken. Prior to this album, his albums were for the most part categorized as rap releases. He's immersed himself in the next phase of his career fully, and he experiments with his range more vocally and is more versatile with the records he put out on this album. The records are a lot more stickier, they feel more polished. This album only has one verse of rapping and the rest is singing. The intro to this album is A Dead Man Walking, which is loud, it's in your face, it's brash, it's chaotic. From this album, his big breakout came out from the song Son of a Sinner, and this feels like the home run he's been searching for his entire career. Without knowing much about Jelly Roll prior to making this video, aside from his viral speech, as soon as I got to the song, I said to myself, yeah, this is the one. I fully understand why this song took him over. An Empty House sounds like the most he's pushed himself vocally up until this point.
And that art sometimes is an expression of what words are even afraid to say. So I think it's a responsibility as a songwriter to write those kind of songs. I was talking about how it's so important for us to recognize that our windshield is bigger than our rearview mirror for a reason, because what's in front of us is more important than what's behind us. That's that right. Who we were is not who we are. Right.
In 2023, Jelly Roll released Whitsit Chapel. This album is the most complete body of work of his career up until this point. Lines like, I'm a country jail revival, I'm a trailer park tornado, jagged edges on my halo. Visual imagery and how sharp the writing is impressive on Halfway to Hell. I really love church. The emotionality of the record cuts through. Feels like a full circle moment for Jelly Roll. Of course, he had a church upbringing, but he went through a lot of painful moments that felt like hell on earth to him, but he's made his way back to his course. It feels like salvation. This album is an ode to his journey. In this journey, he realized that it was either success or nothing at all, but it never changed how he related to the people who are most lost and down and out. Jelly Roll is able to tell his story more concisely and effectively through country music than in rap. Jelly said it takes less words to write in country, and it feels like he makes every word count in his country songs. His strong melodies do most of the heavy lifting, and I imagine it's easy for him to tell his life story lyrically after the melody is figured out. How he covers his vices with melody has a stronger grasp on my ear. And it's interesting how he talks about his love choice, likely his wife, and how she has a stronger hold on him than his addictions. His experiences are enough to stop most people dead in their tracks. His city and his experiences are synonymous with his identity. They hold a sense of belonging for him when nobody else would accept him or take a chance on him. No matter how destructive that may look to someone else on the outside, it presents itself as a warm and familiar place to him. She feels like she's flying while we're all watching her falling from the song She, and this song is about the fentanyl epidemic.
Did Save Me Taking Off change your perspective on the type of music you do and how you release it? Because just 3 years ago it came out, but it just went #1 on the country charts this week.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One, it showed me that sometimes you got to let a song find people. Yeah, so I've never thought about like coming from a main character situation as much as being a guy that's just, and even I hope that when this is all said and done, I think I'll be one of the voices that will narrate how it actually happened anyways.
In 2024, Jelly Roll released the Beautifully Broken album. Now, I was watching the Apple Music interview about this album, and he was saying that he was coming from a narration perspective, and that now that he's grown his success and he's amassed all this fame, people know his name, the question was, does he feel like the center of attention? And he always felt like he was narrating the room and being around the room. And I think that's what this album feels like. It feels like a narration of not just his experiences, but other people's experiences. You take the record, I'm Not Sober, Winning Streak, all these different songs encapsulate different experiences from people that have walked or come across Jelly Roll's life. And he feels that he could relate to them in some capacity. All
of us were sad. This dude was happy. He walked over with a smile like he'd seen it. He was like, oh, don't worry, baby. Nobody comes in here on a winning streak. And so I went back to the meeting a week later while we started the song. The guy ended up being like 25, 30 years clean. They came in to help the other guy.
Wow.
So we wrote the song. It's called Winning Streak.
And meeting people there who are trying to turn their life around after dealing with substance addiction and abuse. And it's definitely a record about redemption. This album's a record about redemption, and not just because what you've been through in your life, as long as you're breathing and as long as you're living, you can still change your life around. As he sanctifies his spirit from this moment on in his career, and he gets closer to that redemption arc, and he gets closer to finally turning his life around through diet, through his exercise in his career, through lyrical exercise and melody exercise, and how he becomes a stronger songwriter in his career. He was able to take all these elements and returning back to church and being able to be the voice for the voiceless. He was able to break generational curses that existed before him, and he was the scapegoat, not in a bad way, but he was really the symbol of the end of that pain in his family lineage. He was able to be the one to take what he's been able to experience in his life and turn it around and be able to impact other people. And he's able to stop that generational curse with him, and able to stop himself from passing on trauma to his kids, to his wife. And he's able to really focus on creating a life that gives his family a chance at a healthy life, a chance of being able to do what they want to do, regardless of expectations, regardless of obstacles. I mean, there's still going to be challenges. They're not exempt from challenges, but with Jelly Roll coming into this phase of his life as healed as he possibly can be, he's able to give a life for his children and experiences for his children that are different than his experiences.
And then we wrote the record right then, and the hook was All Your Angels Are There. This album's finna come out in 2 weeks. And I cannot sleep thinking this song's not gonna make it. I called Skylar, probably in the middle of the night. I think I just texted her the song, no context, with an open chorus. And I said it had a chorus, but I blew it. I think what God's telling me is this needs to be heard from a woman.
You know, coming from where he came from in Antioch, Tennessee, he was bound to being a statistic either through the graveyard or jail, and to be able to make it out of that into the success story that he is 1 in a million. And he uses this opportunity to reach as many people as he can, and he's forever grateful for it. And that's what I like most about Jelly Roll, is his character. And you'll see in the clip that I threw into the Apple Music clip about Past Yesterday with Skylar, that he talks about, at your lowest of lows, when life's been cruel and unfair, I just hope that you know all your angels are there. After so long of asking himself, what's wrong with me, I hear on this album the growth and maturity to finally use what he's been able to work on skills wise in therapy and just through life experiences, that he has the tools and just the space to love himself, to look in the mirror and actually like what he's looking at, instead of being ashamed of it or having to cover that up with his vices. And I think this album signifies a strong building block in his journey to reversing some of that trauma that he's experienced in his life. You have the determination and work ethic and the vision to put all those elements together. Eventually you're going to make it. Eventually you're going to turn your life around. Eventually you're going to get your shot. Everybody gets their turn. Everybody gets their shot.
I represent those who may never get sober just as much as I represent those who are.